Hello. In today's video, I am going to use the SOA suite to create a Hello World greeting using the rules engine and various other components within SOA suite. The business logic for the Hello World application is based on the data in the employees HR.employees table in the database that comes as a demo table. And we are going to use that data to determine greetings. And here is what I've written up for the basis for the application. Hello World, a lesson in convoluted business logic and inept corporate culture. I built this as a kind of a joke just to see how to do it, but one of the things that came to mind when I wrote this was a rather humorous vision of the corporate culture, and this particular one at Microsoft came to mind as I wrote this one. So bear in mind there is some intentional humor. I hope it's interpreted as humor in the sayings that we meet, the greetings that are used in the application. So let's go back and I'll actually go here again. So the board of directors of hypothetical company Agnon Inc. has instituted a process where employees will greet each other with distinct pre-approved greetings that are determined by the employee's stature, hire date, and relative position within the company relative to the person being greeted. And just put a little apostrophe there. Each employee will be outfitted with an identification tag and a scanner that will be used to scan the employees that are approaching. The scanned identification number will be fed into the Hello Rules application and return to each participant in the imminent greeting. Using the HR employees table, we will use functionality to determine whether the individual is in the top 10 salary range, of managerial status, hire date prior to the greeting person, and in the same department. Based on these and maybe a few other various pieces of information that we can determine from the table, we will determine a set of greetings. The calculations must include both the greeter and greetee relative status and determine the approved greeting for each. So let's take a look at the XSD that I've created, and here are the values. They're all Boolean, whether I'm a manager or the person's a manager, whether I am the direct manager or they are a subordinate, or whether they're hired before me or I haven't actually used this one. I was going to implement it, but it's in the code. And then here are the greetings that are possible. Now, honorable senpai would be to a person who is in the top 10% salary range of the company. And if both of those people are in the top 10 salary range, the one that was hired first would be the senpai, whereas the other one would be the kohai. If you're not familiar with these are terms used in the Japanese culture to indicate relative status. A senpai is somewhat like a mentor, and the kohai is a mentee, I suppose. A subordinate senpai is where a person is hired prior to the manager, but the manager is obviously the person's manager. So they're subordinate in the fact that they were hired prior to the person, but they're also referred to as senpai, honorific mentor. Subordinate is something that a manager or honorable senpai would use towards a person of a lower status. And here you have simple senpai and kohai. And senior teammate, these are for people who are neither managerial or of the top salaries, but are in the same department, and this is determined based on hire date. And for anybody else who is outside the department, you get a grunt, which brings us back to the Microsoft version here. So, excuse me, that's so here, these are the possible greetings that can be um, provided from the application. What I've done is I've created an employee SDO. We can take a quick look at that. We're looking at the employees view. I've actually don't need all of these, but I have created a view criteria also, which allows somebody to plug in a employee ID and determine whether they are the manager of the person. There's other ways to determine it, but I've used a number of different ways to do so. And now here is the uh, query that I used using expert mode, and you can see that I've got the salary. I did a few extra things here. Here's the salary average. We're not actually using that. Um, so some of these things may not be immediately apparent, but for example, this one is determining what the top 10 salary is. And it's really not a percentage, but of the of all the employees, what are the top 10? You know, what's the highest based on top 10? And so if we go over to our composite, here we have the incoming request. Here is the rules, and here is the data going out to the SDO. Let's quickly take a look at this. We have assigning the inputs. First, we get let's say that I'm a greeter, and here is somebody else that I'm going to be meeting. So I send my data, and I get all of my information, and then we send the person who is walking down the hall towards me his information, and then we get that information back, and then we can determine, for example, whether that person is a subordinate, if they're a manager. And here we do, for example, a lot of the Booleans that were in the criteria XSD, for example, same department. So we're going to just say, is my department the same as that other person's department? And it answers either true or false. Here, for example, we'd say, is my salary higher, or the other person's salary higher than the top 10 salary? Actually, we're probably doing it for mostly for, and this one's me top 10 salary, and this is the other person top 10 salary. And here is asking whether the person has any subordinates, whether they're a manager, whether they're my direct manager, and we're basically saying, is the manager ID in the employee table the same as the person I'm greeting? And here we have, is the hire date of that person less than the hire date of me, or vice versa. I'm not really reading it. So, and here we're saying, is the salary higher? I actually haven't used this one, but you can see that pretty much it would return a yes, no, or true, false based on Boolean output. So that is the copy rule. And then we assign it to the rule, and we invoke the rule, and then we assign the output. Let's go take a look at the rules. Now, I've got some facts here, the greeting type and the greeting. I've got a bucket set based on the greeting type, and if we just take a quick look, these are all of the values that were in the XSD. And now if we look at our rule, we can see, for example, that, we start with the top 10 salary, and it's either the person I am greeting is either in it or not. And if they're in it, then, for example, am I in the top 10 salary? This would be this line here. If I am, it's true. If I'm not, it's false. And then the same department, it doesn't really matter for this particular set of logic. Basically, what I really wanted to do was have a very complex if-then set of statements. So in some cases, some things would apply. In other cases, it wouldn't apply. And here you can see that, okay, is the person that I am greeting my direct manager, true, false, and if it's false, is the hire date closer, I'm sorry, um, let's expand that, is the hire date before or after mine? And then based on that, you can see what kind of greetings that we are meeting or delivering to the person coming towards us. So the Honorable Senpai, again, is somebody who is your mentor, and honorable, indicating that they're in the top 10 salary. I know this is rather, as I said, it was inept corporate culture. Um, Here you have, I think we can, honorable Kohai, subordinate. So a manager or any, actually, I think it's believed these guys. Well, let's follow through here. So the person who I'm greeting is not in the top 10 salary. If I am in the top 10 salary, then it's kind of hard because I've rearranged the size of these things before they were pretty much aligned to the top. The honor, so I would say subordinate. Let's straighten these out so that it's readable. Okay, so somebody who I greet is not in the top 10 salary, but I would greet with the term subordinate. Okay, if they are not in the top 10 salary and I am not in the top 10 salary, and they are in the same department or not, if they're not, then I just grunt at them. If they are in the same department, excuse me, then we look at whether they're my direct manager. If they're my direct manager, then I would greet them with either, and this is where I put in the hire date is previous to mine. So if my manager is hired after me, I would call them a subordinate senpai. I threw that one in there just for giggles. And then if we're, let's see, my hire date is after the manager, then it would be a senpai, which again is mentor. So you can kind of see how this goes. And you follow these boxes down, and then you get to the relative greeting that would be performed. So if we take a quick look at the table, the first test I'm going to do is with Stephen King and Nina Kochar, and you can see that this is the president, and they're both in the top 10 salary, which is around $11,000, and this person here is the manager of this person, and then they're in the same department ID. So let's run this. I think okay, here we go. So we're going to have the subordinate meet the president of the company. And this is kind of interesting because it takes a little longer than the 215 milliseconds here. Let me refresh that. And if we just go to the hello rules, which is really the easiest thing to do, and we actually, well, if we look here, Honorable Senpai. So that person is my manager and hired before me. And also, actually though, this depends on, they're in the top 10 salary too. So that kind of co-ops whether they're in the same, whether in the same department isn't as important as, if they were in the same department, they'd be just senpai. But here they're honorable senpai. And if we turn that around and we go and do 100 and 101, okay, this one, I keep on forgetting this is open here. I'm going to go back. I don't know. Let me close this out because there we go. I want to make sure that it's not got something in the cache. that would keep it from showing. This time we'll take a look here. We'll go down to the very bottom and look at the assigned output, which is employee 100 greets employee 101 with honorable kohai. And you can see that the payload going in is I am in the top salary, the other person's in the top salary, they're in the same department, they're my manager. Direct manager is false because we're talking about the president of the company meeting his subordinate. Subordinate is true, hire date is false, and salary hire is false. Not that that's used. And the payload out is the kohai, honorable kohai, indicating that they are in the top 10 salary. Next, we're going to take a look at employee ID 162, 163. These people have a, relatively speaking, low salary. I did not include commission percent in the calculations, but they are in the same department. They are not each other's manager. And the hire date of one is prior to the other. So let's see how these two go, 162 and 163. Okay. And let's resize this a little. If we look at the hello rules, we can see that the answer is junior teammate, because if we go back, we can realize that 162 is basically my number, and that's the person I'm greeting. And if we go back to SQL+, we can see that 162 is prior to 2007. And if we switch them, oh, it's open. Let's just refresh that just to be sure. And this one, oh, did I get it? Let me just close this again. I'm sorry, it's seemingly... Okay, senior teammate, there we go. So I think it was just not, this screen was not refreshing properly. So that's how it works. And now, just for giggles, let's get somebody who's completely out of the department, and we will do, here we have 50 and 80. So 162 greets 192. (162) greets 192. And this is going to be a very elaborate greeting based on the fact that they are not in the same department, and that greeting is, I don't think this is quite refreshed. Grunt. So that's how the Oracle Rules Engine works, and I had a lot of fun putting this together. It's a fairly complex application. It goes both using ADF to use an SDO to get the data, and then we have the BEPL process and the rules process, and there's quite a lot going on here. So I hope that was interesting, and I hope you have a great day.